about it.
Okay.
Susan, can you say one more time so I've got it all set? So Susan speaks first, Cora next has a short presentation, and then after that...
Rosemary, Amelia, and Willa, as per the artist biography that we had. Yeah. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. This is cool.
Terrified.
Oh, come on.
I've practiced already a couple times.
I like your background,
with
Susan.
sharing screen and
Look
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Susan, she's nowhere near Dart's garden.
Not tonight. I'm at home. At home with my palm trees. Okay, so here comes Kathy. I'm happy that Kathy is here because Kathy is another board member and she will help me
Kathy?
report to the board on Monday about our evening. So I'm very happy that Kathy's here to help me make a report to the board on Monday.
oh, great. I got a call from Jane around 7 tonight and asking about how to click on the link for this.
Oh,
And so she actually got the reminder earlier today, but the link that you can click on she didn't have that for some reason. So anyway, but yes, I forwarded my email to her, and so hopefully she will be joining us too.
yeah, what can I say, right? We're trying something new and it's
Yeah.
good. Very, very good.
I'm going to begin recording from my end as well, so don't be surprised when you get the little notice there.
Okay.
Well, I think we have a very good crowd tonight. My whole screen is full.
That's good.
Isn't that nice?
No more allowed.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's lovely. That's just lovely.
Welcome, Judy. Nice to see you.
Hey, Alex, good to see you too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Will Ron be joining us tonight?
He will. He's just going to his computer.
Okay.
Oh, there's Rod.
Hi, Willa.
Oh, hi.
Okay.
Hi, Rod.
So how many have we got
hi.
now? Have I got it?
Hi, everyone.
19.
Wow.
Total.
19. Excellent. Excellent. Well, when Ron arrives, then we'll be an even 20. That's perfect.
Welcome, newcomers. I'm muting everyone very politely as you come in, and if you need to speak, you're very welcome to unmute. It's just that if we have too many microphones on at a time, we get feedback.
Thank you for that reminder, Alex. I would never remember to say that.
Oh, don't forget, I taught music classes over Zoom all of last year.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
learned a few important tricks.
Yes. Alex is an artist in his own right. A different field than visual, but an artist nonetheless.
I Googled him. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what comes up if you Google me.
Awesome stuff.
I checked him out too. Yes.
Oh!
Did you find some photos where I still had hair?
Yes.
Not yet.
Or 2 tons.
1 minute to go, and here comes Ron. So we have an even 20 tonight. Hello, Ron, wherever you disappeared to on my screen. Oh, there you are, way down there. Sandra, that's 21.
Can people join late?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if they have the link, people can come in.
Correct. Yep. As soon as they join, whether we've begun or not, we can let them in, unless we want to make them wait because they're late.
No.
Like at a concert, you have to wait until the piece is finished before you sneak in with the usher.
Listen, where I live, it's 7:30. Aren't we
Yeah,
building?
well, it's
Yeah,
open.
it is now.
So we've got a couple more that are just coming in just now. So just we'll
Oh,
get
Polly.
sorted. We'll get sorted in just a moment. Okay, Alex, I think I'm ready to begin.
Very good.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Murray, and I'll wave so you can actually see me without scrolling through all the names. And I'm the chair of the Darts Hill Garden Conservancy Trust Society. And it is our pleasure to host this evening of artist interpretation, Resplendent Explained. And we are also the hosts of the Resplendent Temporary Art Exhibition in Darts Hill Garden Park. And I would encourage you to visit, so that you can see these installations and enjoy the beauty of the garden. So I'm going to sign off and hand over the administration of the meeting to Alex McClune. And perhaps Alex can just say a few words about his role and himself, and then we will carry on with the evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to unpin Susan, and I'll pin myself. That means you all have to look at me for a couple minutes. Hello, while I explain the rules of engagement tonight. I'm your moderator for the evening. I'll make sure everybody follows the rules and talks when they're supposed to and doesn't talk when they're not supposed to. One thing we've mentioned already is that if too many microphones are on all at the same time, we start to get feedback, and we all want to hear what our artists have to say this evening. So as soon as we begin in just a minute, I'm going to mute everyone, turn off all of your mics, but only very politely. And if you have something to say at any point, you're always welcome to unmute your mic. Depending on your computer system, you'll find the button for doing that at the bottom or maybe at the top. If it doesn't show up, you might need to move your mouse or to press the Alt key on your keyboard. So you can turn your mic on and off. Take a look and see how that works now. Of course, if you're already a Zoom expert, I don't need to tell you that. I'll pin the artists, that is, set them up just like I did with myself, so that you'll be seeing them when they speak. They'll also be sharing their screens at different points to show us things that they've been working on. If you have any further questions about the technical side of things, now is the time to ask it. And if not, we'll begin by muting everybody except for me. You all have the ability to unmute yourself when you want to. I'll remove the pin from me, and I'll let you all meet our first speaker tonight for a short bit, which is Cora Lee Leger. I'll unmute her and pin her, but let me also read you a quick introduction so you know who this lady is. Cora Lee Leger is a visual artist living in South Surrey, BC. After earning a BFA from the University of Minnesota, she attended the BAM Center School of Fine Arts. Great place, I've been there. Later, Cora completed graduate studies in art therapy and had an active career as an expressive therapist with children, families, and the elderly. She's now retired from that profession, and her present art practice involves drawing and bookmaking, as well as intensive handiwork projects that reflect a desire for quietude and meditative ways of engaging with the world. Several permanent collections in the Pacific Northwest region include her works. Cora fondly dedicates her work in Darts Garden to her late husband, Don, who was an accomplished artist, an expert gardener, and a deep inspiration. Cora, the floor is yours.
Okay, just a minute. I've just lost you here. Okay, I'm unmuted, and I will just start with a, can you hear me? It's okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, I'll just start with a brief introduction to general words about zinc and the garden, our relationship with Darts Hill. Zinc Artist Collective grew out of some open drawing meetings to connect with a community of artists in South Surrey. Several of the artists decided that we wanted to work on some projects together, projects that might take us outside of our customary individual realms of practice. Over the years, we have done a variety of projects, such as transforming a moving truck into a mobile gallery, setting mannequin torsos in the tidal zone at Crescent Beach, and dressing vacant store windows in Newton, besides other projects. In 2018, through Willa Downing, who was then on the board of Darts Hill Garden, we proposed a temporary art exhibition. Unlike previous Arts at Darts exhibitions where artists had booths or easels to display and sell artwork, this was not to be art at the garden, but rather art in the garden. We called the show 7.5 Acres, and it was held on one rather rainy weekend in April, but nevertheless proved to be a successful experience for both Zinc and Darts Garden. In 2019, Zinc members invited other artists to join. This second exhibition, called Understory, was extended to a month. For the participating artists, this was an opportunity to explore diverse ways of working in an amazing garden environment. For Darts Hill, this was an opportunity to bring some new visitors into the garden. As we plan to install our third exhibition, Resplendent, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. The exhibition was subsequently postponed to the following year, which brings us to now. Over the course of waiting and planning, we were excited to learn that the board has developed a new artist in residence program, as well as allowing us to present Resplendent at last. We wish to thank Darts Hill Garden Conservancy Trust Society and the City of Surrey Cultural Grants Program for their support. So thank you for allowing me to bring you through this introduction. And you're not done with me yet, because there is one of the artists who is unable to attend the Zoom meeting, named Leslie Garrett. And on her behalf, I'm going to share some words that she has written about her work. So I'm going to just try to share. The host has disabled my screen sharing, so I can't show you the PowerPoint I have.
Susan can fix that for you in just a second.
Okay, thank you.
There you go, Cora.
Okay, we'll try it again. Great. Okay. Let's see. Share. Here we go. And I will. See Leslie there? Leslie Garrett was born in Toronto. She took life drawing classes at the Banff School of Fine Arts, familiar place, as a teenager, and later studied art for 2 years at the Ontario College of Art, now OCAD-U. She holds a BA in Art and Psychology from York University in Toronto. Leslie spent many years working as an art educator and has exhibited widely in the US and Canada. Leslie has been living in White Rock, BC since 2009 and has mostly participated in collaborative projects and exhibitions, especially with the Zinc Artist Collective. Life-giving cones, these are Leslie's words now. Life-giving cones is my art for Resplendent and can be found hanging in a large magnolia tree near the house at Darts Hill Garden. Nature has always been a source of inspiration for my art, as in my life. I walk in wild spaces near my home in the Lower Mainland several times a week and know the value of stopping to discover the hidden gems. This past fall, I began to gather conifer cones to dry inside. I was imagining a hanging of foraged materials from the woods that could evolve into an organic abstraction, one that evoked a living organism. Someone said that it resembles a swarm of bees from a distance. Yep. Let me just get to the next slide. For some reason, it's not advancing here. Just a moment. I'm going to just stop this for a second. I think I've got a technical issue with my PowerPoint here. Sorry. Oh, here we go. I began by knotting jute into a loose net-like structure to hold the dried conifer cones. Securing them in the jute was very challenging, and like the rest of us, I kept wondering if my art would survive out in the elements. Here
Cora,
is a
will you
closer
please
look.
share your screen with us?
Oh, am I not sharing? I'm sorry.
We're just
Oh
looking
dear.
at you again. Thank you.
Okay, just a minute. How do I get out of this here? I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. Okay, we'll try this again.
That's great. We can see it with you now.
Okay, now hopefully I'm going to be able to advance through this. Okay, so this was her initial tying of the knots. Here's a closer look at the installation as it was first installed. Once outdoors, it turned into something different. After a bout of hard rain, hail, and cooler weather, my art went feral on me. To my surprise, the previously dried large vertical cones on the top layer closed up, leaving spaces for the cones to relax and fall every which way. I returned to the site in an attempt to tie them back, but they weren't having any of it, so I just secured them askew. I actually like the change. The smaller cones gradually closed as well, but seemed to stay secure. So you can see the top layer there is now a little bit askew. The photo you are seeing now is the beginning of the metamorphosis. The hanging as a whole actually has become a kind of living organism that expands and contracts. In the warmer weather, I can see it will change again as the cones dry and open up again. As the artist, I don't particularly have control, even though I've tried. The thought occurred to me that when we tamper with inherently perfect natural processes, we can't always predict the outcome. So now what to do if a squirrel comes along? And those are your words from Leslie. Thank you. And I will stop sharing my screen. There. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
We're a very patient crowd here. I'm sure everyone would agree with me.
Well, I thought I had it down better than that, but it is what it is.
Happens to us all. Susan, if I'm correct, our next presenter is Rosemary Burton.
All right.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm
thank you,
going
Alex.
to
Our next presenter is Rosemary Burton. And thank you, Cora, for the introduction to the Zinc group. And thank you for presenting a bit from Leslie Garrett. I really enjoyed it. Carry on.
Allow me to introduce you to Rosemary. Rosemary, let me read an introduction so everyone can get to know you. Rosemary Burton is a Canadian artist living and working in Vancouver. She graduated from Emily Carr University of Art and Design in 2011. Her work is mostly experimental and often repetitive in nature. Pattern and structure are an important element in her work, which is influenced by biology, mathematics, and particle physics. Recent installations have included thousands of butterflies punched out of old books. I saw that one, it was fascinating, formed into clusters, and quotations from literature translated into binary language and beaded into long glittering strands. She is a member of the Nimbus Collective and 13 Feet Off the Ground Artist Collective. She is honored to have been invited to show work with Zinc Artist Collective. Rosemary, I turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Alex. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And
Good.
you tell me when you want me to show the slides for you.
Okay, you could put the first one on now, Alex. That would be great. Thanks to everyone for inviting me to be part of this installation in the garden. I love working in Darts Hill Garden, and I understand that it's situated on Coast Salish traditional lands. So thank you for everyone for inviting me to be part of it. The installation here shows the beads actually hanging in the garden. And my work installed in the garden is titled Shelley's Cloud. It's a series of long strands of beads hanging from the Picea abies, I believe that's the right name of the tree, with its strong and graceful branches, apparently greatly prized by Francisca Dart. I made the installation based on the 6-stanza poem, The Cloud, by the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, because of its rather resplendent language. Shelley wrote the poem, 200 years ago. And I'll just read a couple of verses because it's very all about nature. I sift the snow on the mountains below, and their great pines groan aghast, and all the night 'tis my pillow white while I sleep in the arms of the blast. The sanguine sunrise with his meteor eyes and his burning plumes outspread leaps on the back of my sailing rack when the morning star shines dead. As on the jag of a mountain crag, which an earthquake rocks and swings, an eagle alit one moment may sit in the light of its golden wings. My artwork feels like a collaboration with Shelley and the garden itself. For me, placing art in a garden as opposed to a gallery puts it into perspective. Nature is always more spectacular and changeable. Let's see if we could put the process photos on now. And I'll talk about the process. That's the 3 photos in a row. There you go. The strings of beads are an actual translation from text into ASCII, ASCII, 8-bit binary code, so that every individual letter in the text takes 8 beads. The zeros are represented by the round seed beads, which is a little bit hard to see in that photo, but there's long ones and short ones, and the ones by the longer tube or bugle beads. I took poetic license for the ends of each word and used a colored spacer bead. That way it's easier to proofread the work. Having done a great deal of proofreading in the past, it's important to me that there are no mistakes. The ends of each string of beads is coded so that I know which line of verse it is if a string gets broken and I have to repair it, which has happened. Why use beads? I like the idea of taking a high-tech application that happens almost instantly in a computer and slowing it right down to make it human and handmade. Unlike the beautiful and complicated beading done by other artists and craftspeople, stringing a line of beads takes no great skill. It's picky and painstaking and occasionally painful when I poke my finger with the needle. But once I get started, it becomes an almost mechanical process. As in alphabetic text, I choose the binary font that seemed appropriate to the work. The font for the cloud is clear and iridescent beads with darker blue beads for the word ends, kind of like raindrops. It's a bit, I hope it's not too obvious. One of my friends, I think she's somewhere in the ether this evening, said that the work looks like a bejeweled cobweb, a wonderful description. I hope that many spiders will add to the work before I have to take it down. I'll let Shelley have the last word. And this is the final verse of the poem. There's 6 stanzas. I am the daughter of earth and water, the nursling of the sky. I pass through the pores of the ocean and shores. I change, but I cannot die. For after the rain, when with never a stain, the pavilion of heaven is bare, and the winds and sunbeams with their convex gleams build up the blue dome of air. I silently laugh at my own cenotaph, and out of the caverns of rain, like a child from the womb, like a ghost from the tomb, I arise and unbuild it again. And that's it, if there's any questions, but that's Shelley with the last word. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And we will have time for questions for all the artists at the end tonight. So I'll remove this spotlight so that Rosemary's out of the spotlight. And our next artist this evening is Amelia Butcher. Amelia, I'll put a spotlight on you so everyone can meet you, and let me read to you an introduction for Amelia. Amelia Butcher is an artist with a sculptural and drawing practice centered in clay, living on the traditional territories of the Semiahmoo First Nations. She graduated from Emily Carr University in 2013 and is a founding member of the Dusty Babes Collective, working out of their communal studio established in Don Hutchinson's Surrey workshop following his retirement. Her first solo show, Sister Worm, was installed at the Seymour Art Gallery last year, and she continues to exhibit and teach widely. Amelia, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to Darts and Zinc for having me. I'm going to share my screen now because I have some pictures to show you. So just scream if this doesn't work, but I think it's good. Okay. So my piece in the garden is called the Dowser, and it's a figure, a clay figure tucked away with some ferns. That piece came from an interest in dowsing or divining. It's also called water witching. So it's this really old practice, historically started just as a way to find groundwater. So you have like a dowsing rod, which is really just a Y stick, and you hold it in a particular way, and you walk around with it, and then the idea is that it reacts to groundwater. It pulls the tip of the rod down towards where the water is. I really love this illustration, which is sort of like 70s mystical, but illustrates the process really perfectly. Over time, it's really evolved. So now if you look for dowsing materials, it's sort of merged with like pendulum things. So it used to be just about finding groundwater, and now people talk about using dowsing to find like buried treasure, or to find oil, or to find gold, or even just to ask questions. So you can ask a question and then see if your divining rod responds and gives you an answer. Let's see if this is, can I switch to my next one? I may be having the same trouble as Cora. There we go. So it's a really old practice. Here's like some medieval engravings. The guy on the left has the more traditional method, but there was all kinds of special hand postures to maybe access different powers of the divining rod. Here's another illustration that I think is just like so beautiful. So it started as a way to find water, and I actually learned that at Darts Hill, they hired a water witcher to locate the well that's still there, I believe. I'm not sure if it's still functional or not, but it was a water witcher that they hired to find that. And probably what they did, whoever that water witcher was, is they probably chose a branch from a tree on the property. That's the sort of traditional way of doing it. You need a branch that is from the actual location. And the favorite material for making a divining rod is actually from a witch hazel. So this was how I chose the site for the piece in the garden, is by picking a witch hazel. The piece isn't actually installed right under the witch hazel because I didn't want to trample the stuff that was there, but it's close by. Here's Monty Don, my favorite man on earth, with a witch hazel. They're really like interesting, beautiful plants. They have really crazy flowers. And the witch hazel is actually named after this property where it was used for water witching. So it's not really named for like witches with pointy hats. It's named for its water witching properties. Here's another picture of Monty Don, which I had to include because I love the idea that he like brought another sweater to the same photo shoot with the witch hazel. Here's the American Dowsing Society, or there's also a Canadian Dowsing Society, and their annual conference is actually happening right now. So if I wasn't in this Zoom meeting, I'd be trying to get into that one. Their motto is, it's written really tiny there in their logo, it's Indago Felix, which means the fruitful search, which I think is like a really beautiful motto, like not just for dowsers, but also for artists, because it's, especially my practice is a lot about research and reading and digging and trying to find sort of that next little tidbit of information that leads you along. And dowsing is really like artistic catnip to me. Like it's just perfect. It's everything that I'm interested in. It's totally irresistible. It's this intersection of like folklore and of magic and practicality, and it just sits perfectly at this question that I think about a lot in my artwork, which is like fiction versus nonfiction. And to me, that question is different than, like, fiction versus nonfiction is different from true and false, and it's different from truth and lie. Like, we understand that fiction is something that's not necessarily true, but there's like a reason behind it, that there's a story behind it. So when I look at something like UFO sightings or ghost stories or even dowsing, I'm really pretty uninterested in like debunking, and I'm also not really that interested in belief. I'm really mostly interested in the story behind it and in the patterns of the stories and in the kind of social history and natural history that connects those narratives. So the piece that I made for the show, this is a picture of it in progress. I just thought it was like kind of a nice spooky image. Clay, you have to kind of manage the moisture really carefully. So for a while she was this ghost in my studio wrapped in plastic. I was really thinking about this phrase, the information landscape, that we hear, again, artistic catnip. Like when I hear the phrase information landscape, I picture like an actual landscape, and I wanted to make a figure that could sort of be standing in the landscape, like looking for answers or looking for information or looking for a story. So that's where the dowser came from. And I thought a garden is like just the perfect information landscape, because just like dowsing, when you walk around with a gardener, they're telling you all the little tidbits of like science and anecdotes and folk magic and little practical things and superstitions that they do to kind of keep their garden going. Here's another picture of inside my studio while it was in progress, and there on the right next to the legs is an actual dowsing rod given to me by a family member who is a dowser, who I sense does not really understand why I'm so interested in it. He's like, well, this is just the first step of digging a well, like, hello, it's so obvious. But I'm totally fascinated, and he was kind enough to send me one of his dowsing rods, so I have that in my studio on the wall. And another portion of making this piece was I started making these figures, these figurative sculptures, and asking women in my family or close friends to model for them. So this is my sister-in-law modeling for it. And it's kind of an interesting, new to me process where you have this person who's sort of present in the piece. I didn't like, you know, I just choose whoever is standing closest at the time to make the model, but then somehow invariably they kind of get like woven into the piece. And we didn't have the dowsing rod in the house, so she just used wooden spoons, which worked well enough. And then there's maybe one detail on here that I just wanted to point out that maybe expresses more this idea of like fiction versus nonfiction. And that's when I was painting her, I sort of spontaneously decided to paint the shadow on her shirt. So there's this, it's actually like illustrated onto the surface of the clay. That's not the real shadow. And that just like really tickled me, because it's exactly that. It's like, it at one point it was the real shadow. You know, I took it outside and I traced where the shadow fell. But of course, where she's sitting, that's not the real shadow. So it's like, well, is it real or is it not? and it kind of like pokes at your perception a little bit in a way that I really enjoy. And part of making these sculptures too, like they start out as these clay forms that are pretty vague, like not actually that descriptive. And then I get to come along with the ink and paint, and it sort of overlays or projects an image onto a thing. And it's sort of like this play between surface and form, and like which is more real, which is the fiction, which is the nonfiction. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for letting me talk about dowsing. I'm so curious always to hear other people's dowsing stories. So if you have one, I would love to, if you can email it to me. And that's the last of my images. So I'll stop screen sharing now. And we're all clear. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amelia. I'll take the spotlight off of you. And again, if you have questions, things that you're very interested to hear about her work and her processes, we'll have time for questions at the end. Now, let me introduce our final presenting artist this evening, Willa Downing. Willa, I'll spotlight you so everyone can meet you. And let me tell you a little bit about Willa. Willa Downing is passionate about both science and art. She has a PhD in biochemistry from UBC and a diploma in painting from Emily Carr Institute, now University, of Art and Design. As a scientist, she has worked in plant research in Canada and France. She now makes art in her South Surrey studio. Her art practice, often inspired by nature and science, consists of 2D and 3D work as well as site-specific installations. Recently, she has rediscovered clay. As the current artist in residence at Darts, she is using ceramics to explore plant life and landscape at the garden. Willa is also a longtime volunteer at Darts Hill Garden. Welcome, Willa. The floor is yours. Why don't I invite you to mute?
I have unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'll share my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Are you seeing it? I'm interested in network systems and branching structures, such as arteries, neurons, roots, branches, the internet, and so on. Networks are made up of individual components in which the interactions between components are more important than the components themselves. And these interactions give rise to emergent properties of the larger whole. Networks are responsive to changes in the environment. They're always open to new signals or information, and they're very adaptable. In my installation, Wood Wide Web, I've used twigs, yarn, and dental mirrors to create a network that spreads along the ground and into trees. The twigs and branches were collected from Darts Hill Garden, and I want to thank Ken Warren for his help in gathering up some of this material. Of course, the twigs and branches that I've used aren't only just twigs and branches, but they also represent other branching structures. This network of twigs spreads through the forest floor and interacts with the branches of a Japanese witch hazel. And the branches of the witch hazel weave in and out, forming a cluster or a structure that resembles a node, which is something found in other types of networks. And a node is just where lines intersect. It's a central or connecting point. It's a hub. And so this is all above ground, and below ground is also a network. And here's a little illustration of how this underground system works. It's a network of roots and fungi that helps trees to communicate with each other and to share nutrients. To describe this network, the term Wood Wide Web was coined in 1997 by Suzanne Simard, a professor of forest ecology at UBC. The Wood Wide Web is the underground social network of trees mediated by mycorrhizal fungi. And so here, I'll just get my little red pen here and make a drawing here. There's a mycorrhizal fungus, and it has produced a vast web of mycelium threads connecting the roots of different trees. So you can see in this illustration that there's a huge network of these threads. So in this example, the underground web of mycelium connects a broadleaf tree, the European beech, to a conifer, a Norway spruce, and so that they are able to communicate with each other and to share nutrients. So you can see how by this underground connection, one tree can communicate and talk to other trees in the whole system. So I was totally inspired by that term, Wood Wide Web. Now, the sparkling dental mirrors that I've used represent the spark of signal transmission. So, for example, the firing of neurons at synapses, or the transmission of electrons in binary through the internet, etc. To me, the mirrors also look like antennae, or transmitters and receivers, which are all suggestions of interactions with the environment. The mirrors respond to the environment by reflecting light and movement that are always changing. And now viewers are part of the environment, and I hope to bring the viewer into the work when they try to see themselves reflected in these tiny, tiny mirrors, thus becoming a part of the network. And by their participation, the viewer in effect changes the network. And here we see Cora Lee-Leger with her daughter-in-law, Christine Lee-Leger. And here's a shot of another viewer interacting with the installation. That's Noah Lee-Leger, and he was having a bit of fun with the dental mirrors. You know, what else would you do with dental mirrors, right? So the yarn that I used not only binds the pieces of the work together and adds some color, but it also reminds me of the myelin sheath that wraps around neurons to protect and insulate them. So in an earlier version of this work, I made a more direct reference to neural networks. So this earlier work was shown in Edmonton in 2015. It was called Connectome, which is the complete set of neural connections in the brain. And in this case, I've used the same materials, twigs, yarn, dental mirrors, as what was used for my current work, Wood Wide Web. So I'll end with this detail shot of the Wood Wide Web. A big thank you to Scarlett Black for this amazing picture. In the map handout that's available at the garden entrance, I wrote, "Embedded in the world, we are all part of an entangled web." And now I like to add, the essence of that web is nature that is green and glowing and resplendent. Thank you. I'm now going to share the screen. Stop share. There we go.
Thank you so much, Willa. And thank you all the artists for presenting for us this evening. Susan, would you like to say a couple words to introduce the question period?
Yes, I'd just like to thank our presenters tonight. I'm thrilled. I've learned a great deal about the way that your art was created, and I really appreciate that you were so articulate and were able to share with us your experience in creating art in the garden. So I think this is a great opportunity to ask our audience for their questions. I'm sure that somebody's going to want to ask a question or two. So please go ahead.
Yeah, let me give just some tips for asking questions. Don't forget to unmute your microphone because everyone's on. And you could also do, if you're real sharp, you could do what Kathy just did, which is raise her hand. There may be a button along the side or along the bottom, or if you can't see it, you can try turning on the list of users to raise your hand. So Kathy, go right ahead. I won't moderate anything after this. It'll be a wild west. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if Amelia was aware of the history of Darts Hill, in which shortly after Mr. and Mrs. Darts bought their property, they hired a water witcher, I guess, with his divining rod to find their well. I found that very interesting. She used that witcher and the divining rod in her artwork, given the history.
Yeah, what's funny is I had actually already decided to make a dowser, and that was what I proposed like in March of 2020. And then I was reading more about the garden on the website and found out that they had hired a witcher. So yeah, it's just like perfect. Sometimes you just get a big thumbs up.
Absolutely, it was very cool, very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add to Kathy's story there, but we have published a book called, oh, gee whiz, it's gone right out of my mind, but we have published a book, The Society, and the story in there about the water witching is this, is that the Darts hired the guy with the dowsing tool made out of witch hazel, and he was apparently very well lubricated when he came to do this activity in the garden. And so that's part of the story. And also the wellhead still exists. So it's in bed 43. It's been capped. And, it kind of just sits there and nobody actually really, it's not marked in any special way, but it does exist. And so the well is there. We also feel that the garden in that area has somewhat of an artesian well. And so there's often water kind of burbling up in that area. So there's something else to add to the story.
Cool.
I see
Hello?
Gail is ready to ask a question. Please go ahead, Gail.
I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm fascinated by the variety of artwork that the three of you have presented. And I'm wondering how much of the environment, the vegetation and the setting of Darts Hill influences you in your work, where you locate it and what you do and how you present it. I mean, it's kind of a big question, but maybe you can take a shot at answering that.
I guess that's an open floor for the three artists who presented. Go ahead, whoever likes to.
I'm attracted to certain trees in the garden. And so that particular Japanese witch hazel, I just love. And I've used that tree before for one of my installations. The first time I think we had an exhibition there. And I think I'm just inspired by all these twisty branches. And it got me thinking about twigs and branches. And because I had done the previous version of the work I'm showing now, I think that just brought back memories of working with branches. So.
Great.
Rosemary, would you like to unmute yourself?
Unmute. Sorry.
There you are.
Fumble fingered. Like Willa, I find that the trees in the garden are quite magical. And the collections, all the different collections of the plants that Francisca Dart used. Oh, and yes, the book is The Secret Garden. I have it. You gave me a copy and I absolutely love it. There's something magical about walking down those tunnels of trees. And when I first went there, all I could do was look at the ground and the moss that's grown under the trees. And I felt that with the beads, they would really fit in the garden because they are kind of spidery and raindroppy and hopefully not looking like a bead curtain, which has happened before. But but yeah, it's a beautiful place. It really is. And I love I did an installation a couple of years ago in Darts, and I actually did teapots with seedlings coming out, which were all the seedlings that plants that bees and butterflies would go for. And I put that next to the house because I find the inside of the house is very inspiring. It's very early 50s as Francisca Dart left it. And at the same time I was looking in the house, I kept finding all these teapots in the Sally Ann and the SPCA store that were being abandoned. So I rescued them and used them in an installation in the garden. It's a beautiful place.
It's almost so overwhelming sometimes. Do you find making something that actually shows up?
Oh, absolutely, Willa.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put something in the garden, the garden
Just disappears.
is overtakes it. Yeah, which is actually, it's very nice because it kind of puts things into perspective, takes away all the pomposity of the art, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's true. That's very true.
That was totally my experience because like making this figure, it was like clay is a little bit limiting and you're limited by kiln size. So I felt like I had accomplished so much by making it so big. And then I put it in the garden. I was like, well, this just looks stupid. Like I'm just playing a ukulele next to Metallica. Like, what is the point? But I thought like Willa and Rosemary's pieces were really successful in like taking up space and having the little glimmer. So you have this like interaction with it as you walk around and it actually like captures your attention and fits into the space. So if there's a next time, I'm going for like the glitter, I'm going big.
Oh, yours is beautiful. I love that. I love her face and I love the way she interacts with the garden, and she's not too small at all. She's that little elf in the corner, right?
Okay, thanks. But it definitely is a challenge. Like you're just to compete with the nature. Like don't even try.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, Amelia, I love Monty Don too.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
This is kind of pandering. I thought there might be some Monty fans in the.
Gail, what a great question. Who would like to ask another question now? Mr. McDonald.
Hello.
Hi, Marcus.
Hi. It was so interesting to listen to you talk about your work. One question I have for Emily is you mentioned that belief in the dowsing wasn't really necessary, and in fact you were much more interested in the narrative possibilities of dowsing. And I understand that there is a kind of a link in a sense between a narrative and then believing in the narrative, and which is another step, which some people would call that faith, right? And I just feel that making a choice as an artist, any choice you have to make, needs some sort of impetus, right? And some people are driven literally by faith, even in their art and in their interaction with the world. But some people are working without faith and are directly interested in what the thing actually is. right? Or how the thing is interacting with them. And I was intrigued by your statement about belief, and I just was wondering if you wanted to perhaps elaborate on it.
Maybe one thing that is relevant is like in dowsing. So sometimes a source will say, well, you have to be born with the gift to be able to do it. Like you got it or you don't. And then there's some people that say, oh no, it has to be taught to you by somebody who has the gift. You know, it can be like transferred over. And then there's other sources that say, oh, of course, anybody can do it. You know, you just have to like learn properly, or you have to have the faith. And so I kind of love that openness. Like I said, I'm just, you know, I can have my own beliefs about it. It's not that I can't form an opinion, but I just find that part like so uninteresting, you know, like way more interesting and generative is like understanding other people's beliefs and seeing patterns and trying to understand where they come from and seeing you know, are your beliefs or opinions interesting, or is it like their consequences or their actions? Like that's much more interesting. You know, it's very easy to hold a belief or an opinion, but like how that plays out in the world is the exciting part to me. Does that answer a question that's kind of a wild?
Yeah, no, that's great. I find that that approach extremely refreshing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sure, Judy. Yeah, you bet. Maybe like a cross-stitch pillow or something.
Anyone else with questions for our artists tonight?
I have a question for Rosemary.
Is she allowed to do that?
Well, then I'm leaving. No. So Rosemary, your piece is inspired by the cloud, and it's digitized. You've digitized it, but made something concrete, you know, something real from the digitized version of the poem. But you know, when I thought of the cloud, and I actually thought of the digital cloud. Have you thought of that? I mean, is that part of it?
Absolutely hadn't thought of it till you said it.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I just
Yeah.
thought, hey, this is just, you know, it's just amazing. You know, you've made, you've taken something that's digital, that's what's a word? Well, it's something ethereal and made it into something solid, but
Solid.
like, yeah, real that you can actually touch, I guess. But the digital cloud, I mean, you know, it's this whole thing about the virtual and the real. And I don't know, I just thought
that's intriguing, because the digital cloud is actually some great warehouse in the middle of the desert, as I understand it. It's not actually, so I hadn't thought of that, but I love that connotation. Thank you, Willa. That's another part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to tell you that I've made some ceramic clouds, actually. I wanted to talk to you about that sometime, because I was using ceramic, something that's very hard and permanent, to make something that's fleeting and, well, that's just, you know, transient.
Changeable.
Yes. and so I've got a series of these clouds in ceramics, and then I thought of your cloud.
Oh, that's cool. I'd love to see your clouds.
Yeah. Are you going to be there tomorrow? I'll be at the garden tomorrow. I
Yes.
could bring some.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be there next week, actually, because I start
nice.
my residency on Tuesday. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, yeah. But I will see you there.
We'll
I will
compare
definitely
our
see
clouds.
you. Yes, we can.
I've seen the clouds.
Kathy,
They're
did you want to
lovely.
go ahead with your question? Oh, sorry, Amelia, and then Kathy had her hand up as well.
I'm sorry, mine was just a really quick question along the same lines as what Willa was asking Rosemary. I actually went and got my son into the room to see the slide you had of the 3 sheets and how your art developed. And you said the name of the language you use, but I didn't quite get that name.
Oh, it's ASCII, ASCII, 8-bit. Like I am no expert in any of this stuff, but ASCII is, let me see, American Standard Code for Information Exchange. And it's one of the many binary languages that they use in computers.
Binary language. Okay, I had it almost there. I was close, but thank you. I just wanted to look that up to see how it worked. That was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Rosemary, did you say you're starting a residency?
Yes, I am. I'm following Scarlet Black and overlapping with Willa and Cora, for which I'm most honored to be there with those two. And Scarlet Black has done some amazing photographs and shared them with us. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then there's another artist, I forget now who it is, following, I believe, following Cora. I'm not absolutely sure, but there's 5 of us there. So it's rather lovely that we're all kind of intermingling. And when I was installing the beads, I was chatting with Cora about it. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to doing it. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm looking forward to it.
Dorothy, I see your mic is on. Did you have a question for our artists?
Well, my question was partly answered because my question was for Rosemary and asking her what she was going to do in the residency. But I can always add to that, how long is the residency?
It's 4 weeks.
4
So
weeks.
I've got 2 weeks in June and 2 weeks in July. I think each of us has 4 weeks. Yes.
So what are you taking with you?
Well, I'm going to take paper and pencil, knitting needles, secateurs, if I'm allowed to cut some stuff, like maybe, I don't know if there's any invasive stuff in there, but if there is, I would like to play with that. And I just want to talk to the people coming into the garden too. So I think I get stories about where they come from and their backgrounds and why they're coming to the garden. And I don't want to be too invasive with them, but I'm hoping to get some stories that I can work with. So yeah, I'm keeping it open.
Will you take a video camera?
I've got my cell phone. I'm no camera person, but I have my cell phone with video. So yes, I will be.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I missed that one. Sorry, what was that? I've got a very small screen here and I missed that question. Somebody asked me a question, I think.
Judy wants to know about your knitting.
Oh, I'm no great knitter, but I've knitted with wire in the past, and I'm thinking, well, if I can get some long strands of invasive material or something, I might just try knitting with that and see what happens. I have a good friend that crochets with invasive material and she's made some beautiful nests. So I thought, well, I'll take my knitting needles and see what I can find, maybe even ivy, if there is any.
I have 14 acres of invasive materials if you'd like to.
I'll be there, Dorothy.
Okay.
I recommend you avoid knitting the blackberries.
Yes.
Does anyone
Yes.
have some questions for our artists? Polly, why don't you go ahead?
Mute. There we go. Just figuring out how to unmute. My question is actually for Willa and one of our presenters next week, Marcus. I noticed that in both of your pieces, you've used primary colors of paint put onto various spots on the branches. And I was wondering why each of you made those decisions and wondering if there's connections between those pieces.
Well, I could go first, maybe. I just had leftover wool. It was just there and I wanted to use it up. But no, the wool is, I didn't use paint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't use paint at all. I used wool because to me, well, it was practical to use it to bind pieces together. And I was attaching dental mirrors onto the branches and twigs and binding twigs together. And so it was a practical thing to use. I mentioned in my talk also that to me, it was like the myelin sheath. You know, there was some reference to a neural network system. So that's, you know, it insulates the neurons and protects them. And that's the other, I guess that's the other level of reference that I have. Yeah, that's basically it. I didn't, the colors don't really have any meaning to me. They're not, it's not color coded or anything. So.
Thank you, Polly. And it's open for anyone who might have questions for our artists.
Hello?
We hear you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just want to respond to her question very quickly. Like the choice of the three primary colors, in a sense, for me was more of a non-choice than a choice, in that what I was choosing was to work with color. And since I didn't really want to work with any specific color, it made sense to work with the primary colors. And I also wanted to create like a random system so that the dots that are painted on the branches, they keep creating different random patterns, and those patterns don't repeat. So for that to happen, you need at least 3 different colors. If you had just 2 colors, then you get locked into certain patterns. And there's also the choice of using color to begin with. It just came while I was working with the branches. I did all the work on the site. And so while I was working with the branches, there was all this flowering going on everywhere. And I guess I wanted my work to be flowering in a sense too. I wanted those points of color. And there's some other layers of meaning to it and math, but for now, I think that's what I can offer. When I give my talk on the 17th, I will elaborate quite a bit on the color theory and the 3 colors. That's all.
I have a question for Willa and Rosemary, which is, did you originally propose, like for last year, did you propose this piece when you looked back at it again after a year since the show was postponed? Did you change it at all, or is this a totally new piece?
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Mine is exactly as I proposed it last year. So I hadn't changed anything. I just felt like the beads worked with the title, and the title didn't change. If the title had changed, I might have changed the Resplendent. If that had changed to something else, I may have changed the piece, but as it stayed, I stayed with Resplendent.
My piece is similar to what I proposed for last year. Last year, Ken told me there was a whole row of alders that they were cutting down in the upper property. And so I wanted to use those, and they would have been huge. You know, they would have been like 10, 20 feet pieces. And I was going to use the same spot. So it would have been even a larger piece. But this year, but they did cut them down. And so this year they're not available anymore. And so I just used smaller twigs, and they were mostly vine maple and the cornus, the red twigged dogwood shrub that they were, pruning. And so that's what I used. But it was the same idea in the same spot. Yeah.
Now, Susan, you should tell us, how long of a time limit do we have to ask questions this evening?
Well, I think we should take one or two more questions and then wrap up. I've only signed us up for an hour, and I don't know if the Zoom people will all of a sudden just say bye-bye. So we should finish up very quickly, Alex.
Very good. So, and don't forget, everyone, we're going to hear more about it next week and more the week after that. So be sure to mark that in your calendars. Now we'll take maybe one or two final questions from anyone who's interested. Go ahead and turn on your mic and ask away.
Well, I'd just like to make a very quick comment. I love the way Willa's piece almost disappears when you're still, and when it's kind of dark. Because I was there at all kinds of different hours, and I saw it in some remarkable light. And then when you move, all of a sudden it animates because it has all these the mirrors. And I thought that was an interesting relationship. Like, you're still, and it kind of vanishes, and then you move, and it becomes so eye-grabbing in a sense. Yeah, that's all. I just a little remark, really.
Thanks for that comment, Marcus.
No, are there no more questions this evening?
I see Polly's about to ask. Go ahead, Polly.
Yeah, I had a question / comment for Amelia. I was really intrigued with your image of the dowser when she was in her plastic, and you said that was about controlling the moisture within the clay. And then when you said something about the dowsing rods, that you needed to use a twig that was grown from a tree that was grown on the property. And it started making me thinking about the relationship between the water that's contained within things and how it reacts with the environment around it. And so the connection between your piece being wrapped in plastic to contain the water within it, and then the dowsing rod responding to the water in the ground that it came from. And I just thought that was kind of a beautiful connection.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about the water component at all. Doing clay is all about like moisture management, and you have like a pretty stressful relationship with water. It's all about like need more water, need less water, and then you do this firing where you actually cook away the chemical water. Like you dry the piece out as much as you can. You do that first low firing and you cook the molecules of water away. And then that's like the final piece. And then you go in and paint it and you're adding water. And now that it's outside, I think it's still pretty porous. So I'm kind of curious if after her time there, she'll have maybe grown moss. It's totally possible. Kind of interesting. Thanks, Polly. That's a really interesting point. Now I have to go make a piece about that.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up tonight. The first thing I'd like to do is to thank you all for attending, and I hope that you tune in for the subsequent weeks on June 17th and June 24th. I'd like to thank our artists tonight, Rosemary, Amelia, Willa, and Cora, for speaking so eloquently. I'd like to also thank Alex for really making this a special evening for us, because we can all relax and know that we're in good hands with a person who knows what they're doing with Zoom. So just a couple of extra points. For those of you who aren't members of the Darts Hill Garden Conservancy Trust Society, we are the sponsors of Resplendent in the Garden. We're the sponsors and hosts of tonight and the subsequent nights. And I would encourage you to join the society to help us support the work that we do. And you can find us at www.dartshill.ca. And just a plug, if you want to know more about the history, we also have on sale a secret garden. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I look forward to seeing you and hearing new artists speak next week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That was fun.
That was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes.
Great fun. Thank you.
See you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Alex, for your help tonight. It was seamless. Thank you very, very much.
Wasn't it? That was a good one. So next week I won't try to come at 6:30. I thought for some reason I had in my head that it started at 7, and then I saw 7:15, and then I in the end it turned out you were starting at 7:15 to make sure. Eh?
Well,
Okay.
I figured you and I would do something at 7:15, and then the guest would come at 7:30. So that was kind of what I was thinking.
I'll be ready for that next week as well. Okay, Susan, nice to work with you again. Have a great night.
You too. Good night, Alex.